And it says we are live. Welcome everybody to my channel. Today we're doing an hour or so, maybe a little less on gun control. We're going to cover every aspect of the Florida shooting. Well, not every aspect, but most of it. We're going to talk about like the kids being on TV, media bias. Fuck.
What's up?
Who am I echoing off of?
You sound good to me. I think maybe you have it
Oh,
playing on yours on both.
yeah, it's playing in my headphones. Yeah, so we're gonna do every aspect of the what you call it of it from the media bias and all that. We're not gonna attack the kids. We're not gonna spread conspiracies about the kids, and we're gonna talk about policy. And my special guest for today, you know him as No BS, but today he's in Brooks form. How you doing, man?
Hey, what's up, buddy? Thanks for having me on.
It's always a pleasure to talk to you, dude. Even though some people might find you a little bit controversial, so I decided to bring you on for a little bit of a controversial topic, gun
Yeah,
control.
controversial guy, controversial topic. Happy to be here. It's a troubling topic, though. It's some serious themes we're going over today. But all in all, it's good to be talking about it. It's good to have a place too, because I know this is a touchy subject for YouTube. A lot of people have been asking me to cover it, and I just been kind of avoiding it. Not because I don't want to chime in, but you know how YouTube likes to censor certain things like this. This is touchy.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a double standard with the left and social media because the kids are being promoted, they're verified on Twitter, they're all over the news. But if you talk about the kids in a negative way, which we're not going to do because A, we're classy, and B, the second reason is if you do so, YouTube will flag you for bullying a minor, and like none of us want to deal with the community guideline strike. So if you're here to hear negative rumors about the children, that's not going to happen. But I do want to talk about the selection bias. And me and OBS were talking about this on air. And basically, these kids are being put out on CNN and MSNBC because they are the kids that are in favor of gun control. There are 2,800 kids about that went to that school. And I've seen some of them in the Trump listening session and on other media outlets that are not necessarily in favor of gun control. They want to talk about school security or other issues, and we just don't hear from them as often as the gun control kids. So,
Mhm.
Brooks, what do you think about the media bias in that regard?
Yeah, I see it a lot. I mean, you just see these same handful of people kind of pushing this issue. Like it just seems very opportunistic on the sides of people like CNN, the main news organizations that are pushing this around. They just, they had this opportunity. It kind of like happened similarly with the last big situation, which was Vegas. I think there might have been something else in between, but as soon as Vegas happened, then you just start hearing the arguments for gun control, and that's where we're at now. Parkland just happened, and they're jumping in on gun control, and it's effective. I mean, I could see why they would do it. It's a emotional time following these kind of tragedies, and it's a good time to get people politically motivated. I kind of disagree. I on some of these issues. It's the gun thing. I'm pretty much a pro Second Amendment guy. For the most part, I can identify. I can get with some regulations as well. I'm not like against that or working on it, but yeah, I think it needs to be. I think it's an issue that needs more of a clear head. It's kind of gets fogged when we're doing it after these tragedies.
Right. And it definitely is working. I saw the polls that basically said that the approval rating for banning AR-15s or assault weapons, which is a term that I hate because it's meaningless, actually moved from about 50% to 70%. So putting these kids on TV definitely works. But
Mhm.
since you mentioned policy, what do you think about Trump and Rubio saying that they want to raise the age for purchasing a rifle to 21 from 18 federally?
This is the first I've heard of this detail. I heard about a few things before that didn't really bother me. I think the initial move Trump did was something about the bump stock, taking away that specific kind of part you could put on a gun, which I was fine with. This raising the age, I think it's debatable. I'm not necessarily against it. I can see why you want to keep kids or younger people away from weapons as long as possible. I don't think 18 to 21 is that big of a jump upon first hearing it. What do you think?
I understand the argument that it makes no sense that the drinking age is 21, but you can buy a rifle at 16. But I think the drinking age should be lowered to 18. Like
Hmm.
I don't think I actually think that this is one of the worst things that Trump has agreed to. And Rubio, if he gets in front of a crowd, he says things to please the crowd. He's profoundly weak as a senator. So I'm not surprised about him. But I think the age to buy a gun, moving it to 21, kind of moves it out of the thought that it's a right to a privilege. So I actually don't agree with that at all.
Okay.
I would keep it at 18. And also it's like you move it to 21 because this shooter was 19. But what happens when the shooter is 22? Like, do we move it to 25? Like, it's
Hmm.
kind of like you're tailoring it to like a very unique problem. And also, there were plenty of warning signs around this shooter, including a YouTuber that I wish I would have looked up before we did this, who did the right thing, saw a threat in his comments, and reported it to the FBI, and the FBI didn't follow up.
Hmm. Yeah, I heard about that comment too that wasn't reported or followed up on properly. Yeah, I would say, thinking about it, like what you're saying sounds reasonable too. I think, just going in my head, it's like it's not even that big of a change, 18 to 21. Like, I mean, I see where they're going for there, but and like you mentioned, the drinking age versus like the voting age, which is 18. I just don't see the big a difference there. I think it might just be kind of like consolation prize. They're just trying to give something. Like I mentioned, the bump stock thing was going out there. I think it stems from just a lot of pressure out there, a lot of political pressure, and the narrative is turning. And like the stuff we mentioned before with CNN pushing this gun control stuff, it's working, and now they got to like it's like they have to do something. I guess they feel like that.
Yeah, but I always hesitate to like I have no problem with the victims being advocates, which is like the main reason that we're not going to go after them because you experience something, you want to talk about it, it's fine. But the idea that you have some higher like authority to spew the same empty democratic talking points that we've been hearing for years doesn't really work for me. And the thing about the 21 is I feel like if you can join the military, then all rights, privileges, and immunities that are afforded to you at that age. So it seems weird that you can go die in a war, but you can't have your Second Amendment for 3 more years. So to me, it's a
Yeah.
principle thing more than a practical thing. This might reduce some shootings. It's
Hmm.
possible, but I don't know if like the principle should be sacrificed for that.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you on that for sure. And I definitely have to think on this one specifically a little bit more. But I agree with what another part of what you said. And I think you've said this to me before, maybe a little differently in a message. But it was a good point where you're saying, just because these people survived this tragedy, that doesn't make them like gun experts or regulation experts. Similarly, like if someone's in a car accident, they're not uh, an expert in car crashes and stuff like that. I don't want to sound like the amazing atheist and bring in car crashes here,
Right.
but it's a different analogy. Just being like you're not an expert in something because you experienced it. And I would say too, like back to the angle I was talking about, how it's emotional and they're trying to come into these things like after tragedies. I would say there's a good argument to say these survivors are being emotional, like they were, if they were really threatened by these guns. I don't know. I heard some people say these people weren't around the guns or they were outside the school or something. That's a whole other issue. But what I'm getting at is, they're more emotional because they're at that school. Like that doesn't necessarily put them in a good place to talk about this regulation. Like you might want someone that's more neutral or like not as emotional. You know what I mean? Does
Yeah,
that make sense?
I always think like I know it sounds messed up, but I always think that being detached from the emotional aspect makes you better because we should look at facts and determine policy based on facts, not
Hmm.
emotion. Like people are saying the assault weapons ban. The truth is the assault weapons ban does like it covers specific like modifications to guns and there's easy ways around it and it's not like assault weapon is not a meaningful term like military style rifle is not a meaningful term. Like
Yeah.
these don't mean what people think they mean in law. And like that's the other issue is you have a lot of people who don't know anything about firearms talking about firearms policy. So I would say I totally agree the car accident point. I've been in a car accident. That didn't make me an expert on traffic policy. And this is something that the left does, the right does it too, where they'll bring a victim of a policy out and they'll use them to forward the agenda. So you feel empathy for those victims. Like we feel empathy for the victims of the shooting and the
Mhm.
survivors of these shootings. Like some of these people acted amazingly heroically. Some people didn't, which we will get to. But some of these people acted unbelievably heroically, and they took bullets for their students, or they were JROTC people taking bullets for their classmates. Like, we feel
Yeah.
a lot of empathy for these people, but that doesn't mean that they're experts. Like we have to
Right.
separate that.
Or yeah, it doesn't mean they're experts. It doesn't mean the things that they're pushing, their ideas like the anti NRA, whatever, anti this gun or that gun. They're not experts. And the other thing I was going to say about the terminology that is getting mixed up, like you were saying, a lot of these reporters and people talking about it, they don't really know like what's an assault rifle, what's this kind of gun, handgun. They're just like confusing all the things, and there's like these big broad categories, and all I see is a lot of people just kind of like, again, I think I mentioned this before we started, like opportunistic. It's just like a lot of opportunistic people. They see this tragedy and they're thinking how they could spin it to get their policies across. And I think that's kind of messed up. And I know that they have it pushed as this angle, like they're doing this out of nobility and they're doing the right thing. And maybe that, I believe some of them do think they're like doing the right thing, but I say, they're not. In a way, they're kind of like exploiting this tragedy in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I do agree, and I think that's more on the media side than the robot out a little bit. Your thing, but I think people could hear most of what you were. It's definitely, and that's why I brought up in the beginning that there are kids and parents that are in favor of stuff. Like there was a woman who came out and she was in favor of banning guns. Her daughter died in the shooting. She was in favor of banning guns, but she also wanted metal detectors in the school. The left doesn't want metal detectors in the school, so all of a sudden you never see that woman again, right? Even though she has
Hmm.
half the agenda that they want, you never see her on TV again. Like somebody brought up in the comments that some of these kids have become celebrities, and I know that seems like it's bad and it's a bad look on the kids, but I will just point out once again that they're being pushed. Like I follow left wingers on Twitter. Like they're the ones mass retweeting all these kids. Like they have this
Hmm.
like special moral authority, and it's
Yeah.
really just it's what we talk about all the time: identity politics. They are like except these are actual victims of something.
Yeah, and they're getting pushed a lot. A lot of celebrities get involved in this stuff too. Like I remember one night they were talking about those kids that are on TV, and they had like a meeting, and they're all comparing all the celebrities that retweeted them and stuff. And it's just I guess you could just easily say the celebrities are leftists for the most part too, the ones that are retweeting them and stuff. So it's hard to, yeah, like you were getting at. I think I wouldn't put all the blame on the kids or anything. I think the kids for the most part think they're doing the right thing, and they're trying to help.
And also from a pragmatic point, people want you to attack the children. They want you to say that certain children are actors or that they're just disingenuous because they want to make gun owners look like the monsters that they're perpetuating them as. Like that's why
Mhm.
they're going after the NRA. And like have you heard about the NRA losing like company ties with a lot of major businesses because of the media?
Yeah, I've heard about them losing their like discounts and affiliations and different things. NRAs getting pushed out of a lot of places.
Yeah, it's I actually I saw Enterprise actually do this, the rent a car service. I actually bought my vehicle from Enterprise. And I'm in New York City, so it's like impossible for me to own a gun. I'm not a member of the NRA, but when I saw them like cave to this like pressure from social media, I was like, nah, no more. Like even though I get discounted service for my vehicle there, never going there again. Because it's not
Mhm.
right. It's not right to say this organization was responsible for the shooting. When the NRA, I don't think, has ever produced a mass shooter. They did produce that guy in Texas. He was an NRA instructor that actually shot the shooter of the church, but they've never actually produced a mass shooter. And by the way, notice how he's not on CNN 24/7. Like, he confronted a shooter with an AR-15 and he shot him and he stopped the shooting. Like, never, we don't see him anymore. Like, we don't see
Never
him on
mentioned
TV.
or anything. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like you're right. The NRA people, those are like the best trained, like gun owners. Are like the most responsible. Like you have to go through a lot of stuff to get in the NRA. You got to pay your dues and everything too. Like I'm sure there's like tests and requirements. You know, some sort of like gun training or whatever it is. I'm not sure how elaborate it is, but it's not producing like criminals. You know, these are like upstanding citizens. They're just, you know, enthusiastic gun owners, and they want to protect their Second Amendment rights. I don't think they should be vilified at all. I think the fact that it's come against them in this situation is just it's not surprising. Like I could see the connection, but I think it's very misdirected. It's like we shouldn't be going after like gun clubs. It's basically I'll call it a gun club or something like that. And just because, you know, there's a shooting in one place, it's like going after I don't know, going after all cow farmers because someone died from some bad cheeseburgers in one state. It's just like a weird connection if you try to break it down.
Right. It's hard to analogize too, like because it's almost like there's nothing like what they're doing to these gun groups. And the thing is people talk about the money in politics, and I'm not naive. I'm not going to pretend that money doesn't have a big influence on politics. But the gun issue is not one of those issues. Like, what people don't realize, that if you want to pass gun control, your biggest hurdle is gun owners. Because gun owners, when you poll them, their number one issue, their deal-breaking voting issue, are gun issues. People who want gun control, it doesn't make their top 10. So, like, you can say 90% of people want increased background checks, whatever that means, or they want this limited or this banned. But when those people don't vote based on that, it's not comparable to the NRA. Like, a lot supported Bernie Sanders over Hillary Clinton. Bernie Sanders has a moderate record on guns, and like the most liberal gun grabby people voted for him over Hillary Clinton, who had an F on guns. So yeah, if you're not gonna do what the Republicans do and pick the most anti-gun candidate, you can't expect gun control legislation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the gun, that's their main right. You know, NRA people, a lot of conservatives, that's like their first and foremost issue, like you're saying, that they're just going to go for it. And then these other people, they're not really as invested in it. They're kind of like Wayfair, like come and go. They get into it now, which again, like I brought up the how this comes up after shootings, but in a couple weeks or a month, like all these anti-gun people are going to be, I don't know, talking about the Kardashians again. Like they're going to forget about all this stuff, while the NRA and gun owners, they're talking about that stuff like year round.
Yeah, that's their go-to thing. They're vetting candidates. They're doing the whole thing. All right, but I want to talk about one of the most, like, probably one of the most terrible aspects of the story, and that is the fact that there was a sheriff's deputy on the scene that was assigned to the school to protect the school, and it turns out that he didn't enter the school. He just stood beside another building, basically hid, and stayed on his radio, even though he had a gun and it was his job to protect the students. And it's actually worse than that. I saw an interview with a kid who ran into the building to make sure his girlfriend was okay, and the cop wasn't even preventing children from running into the line of fire. So we had the coach that got shot shielding students run past this cop and get into the building. We had an assistant coach run in, and we had a kid at the school like run in. Like, I'm not saying like we're the biggest badasses and we're gonna run into the line of fire for an AR-15, but like, you and I didn't sign up to do that. This guy did, and he cowered for minutes, and it cost people their lives.
Yeah, that's a sad sad story. I mean, again, I like you said, I don't know if I could do the same job, but that's why I don't sign up for it, you know? Like that's why I don't want to get into jobs like cops or soldiers or anything. But it's so messed up, and the fact that the other side of that was like I heard people talking about like other ways to prevent this, like arming people, like getting more guards and stuff. And there's even like that talk about arming teachers, which I was going to ask you about. I think that's maybe another thing, but the fact that this cop even was already armed, it's like it's so messed up, dude.
Right. Well, the thing is like they tell us that we should just wait for the police. Only the police should have guns, but like the police got to do their jobs. And about the arming teachers, I actually thought, and people, by the way, I've seen people cut together clips of the kid asking Trump about banning guns, and then they cut it together with him talking about arming teachers. If you watch that video, Trump was answering a parent who wanted them to arm teachers, and it would be like a limited amount of teachers that already have concealed weapons permits. Apparently, the coach, I'm not 100% sure about this because you can't trust reporting, so I apologize if this is not correct. But the coach that ran in was a gun owner. And if he would have been able to carry his gun in the school, would I have wanted him to run into that building with a gun? Absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what are we talking about? A coach that would risk his life for the kids with no bulletproof vest, or a coward cop? Like, which one would I rather have a gun in that situation? Definitely the coach.
Yeah, that's the thing. I was about to do a video about this because I was thinking something like that. And then I was pretty sure, like you said, the Trump thing was kind of taken out of context. And then the other reason I heard about it was coming up was like a lot of people today or last night were talking about Samuel Jackson, who tweeted about this. And he was like, the story came out that Trump said something about arming teachers, and then Samuel Jackson is like, someone tell this dumb motherfucker why this is such a bad idea. And then everyone's starting to give like him, ass pats, like, oh, good job, Sam Jackson, oh, you're so funny, you use your motherfucker line. And
right.
The whole thing,
Sam Jackson can say motherfucker better than anybody in the entire country.
yeah, and I still love the guy. Like I don't even care. I've seen him do anti-Trump stuff here and there, but he's still, his movies are great. I've been watching a lot of the Marvel movies, getting ready for Infinity War. That's beside the point. What I was gonna say though was, when I started thinking about that story, was stuff like you said, like I was like, yeah, why, if the teachers can hold guns and like help protect people, it's like basically having a cop as a teacher. It's like
Right.
It's like saying, you could just say, I mean, it's even better than that one cop that they had there. We're talking about that cop that didn't go in. Like in some cases, like if it's a gym teacher or someone, it could be better than having a cop. But if you just put it that way, I think people would think about it a little differently. It's like saying, like, it's basically like saying, let's make the teachers into armed guards. If you just kind of like
Right.
reframe it, it doesn't sound as ridiculous. But whenever those people were bringing it up, they're like, oh, are you serious? You really want to give guns to teachers? And then I heard another take on that. Like someone was saying, I think it was like Van Jones on CNN. And he was like, Van Jones is like, if teachers have more guns, then they're going to start shooting minorities. And I retweeted that yesterday. I was like, what the fuck? I mean, I know CNN, it's CNN. You expect the dumbest shit. But I mean, that's really where they're going with this. Like, they come up with these ideas. And it should be noted, I don't know why, but both Van Jones and Samuel Jackson are like, bald black dudes. I don't know what it is, but they're just like, they don't see
Right.
they don't see the benefit if these teachers had guns. Like, I'm not saying if everyone should have guns, but like you said, if they're trained, if they already know how to use a gun properly, like if they could just hold a pistol or have something like hidden in their desk, like in a lockbox or something, like there could be rules for however they want to do it. It's certainly beneficial. I mean, how could that not help?
Well, the point, the Van Jones point, where he has like, it's like the left is, it's like they almost have brain damage, so they have to make things needlessly about race. There's no reason to invoke race there at all whatsoever. It's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
But about the teachers having guns, we're not saying like every teacher, we're not saying any teacher should be forced to do it. But like, if you have a concealed weapons permit and you have like, actual training, maybe you want to create something above a concealed carry for that, then they can do that, and like they volunteer and then they carry it. And I don't think that's the worst idea. The only like if the left wanted to make reasonable arguments, they would bring up this point. If you have teachers with concealed carry, there's not a lot of mass shootings. It's statistically not a thing that happens that often. There's a greater chance that an accidental shooting will come about just because there's a gun there that wouldn't have been there before. So that's the best counter argument against it. Not this they're going to shoot minorities or anything like that. But how about like school security? Like I live in New York City. I don't know where you went to your K through 12, but in New York City we have a NYPD school safety division, and they're in all the schools K through 12. They interact with the students on a minimal basis, but if something goes down, they're there, and they're actual cops that have signed up to work with children.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah, they had
they
that
can't
for
have that at the front.
I went to high school in South Florida, and I remember there was like 5 cops or something that were just always at the high school, like each high school. And I forget what they did. It was mostly security. I think even one of them like taught like boxing or something, like for fun. But yeah, I remember that, and it was like there's always a few cops there, and that's kind of like what I was thinking with the armed teachers thing. I mean, I'm not trying to push it too hard, but like I could see the merit in it, because it's basically if they're good and they're trained with a gun, even the minimal training, it's like having another cop there almost. It's like an adult with a weapon that knows how to use it. It's like I was saying, it's almost like having security guards as teachers. And I know there's also that thing where people say it's like turning the schools into prisons, and I could see that like visually, but really we're just talking about trying to protect people and having just like more defenses. I actually, and then that brings me to one thing I was going to say, because I actually know a teacher. We went a friend, a bunch of us went to the movies last week, and she actually asked me that question. She's like, do you think I should have a gun like at school, like Trump said? And I was just like, do you know how to shoot a gun? And she said
Right.
no, and I'm like, then no. It's
Yeah,
kind of like a simple thing.
if you're somebody who's confident with your gun and you have a proven record of safety, then you can get approved. It's not all teachers, but again, the accidental shootings thing is the best argument. If I was a left winger, that's what I would be doing. I wouldn't be saying that they're going to shoot minority students. It's ridiculous. So what do you think about the I know I mentioned it before we started. I'm trying to think of it right now. Yeah, we talked about the bump stock ban. Um, talked about the NRA. Crap. What else? What else has been going on with this damn shooting? I forgot one more. I forgot something important. I said that at the beginning.
Just like the arming teachers thing, and then
I remember.
Go ahead.
Okay, so the sheriff released. We got to talk about the sheriff, because the sheriff apparently not only, and this part hasn't been confirmed, but it's been reported widely, and we do have the transcript from the other department, but Sheriff Israel does deny this. But apparently 3 other deputies showed up, and they just hid behind their cars. Like, they took positions behind their cars, and they had to wait for another department to show up, and that department is the one that eventually went in the school. So there's a good chance that 4 officers in this case were derelict in their duty with not going into the school. And that's not even getting into all the phone calls that gave explicit warnings about this kid. So what do you think about the police and the FBI dropping the ball on this one?
Yeah, I think it's sad. I mean, maybe it's hard to tell what was going on the ground there, but if they could have even helped. But from these reports, it just sounds like they're kind of waiting on the sidelines, wait and see. I don't know. You think I know it's not a movie. It's not like you could like one of those cops is Bruce Willis and can go in there and like turn shit around and Die Hard style or something. But yeah, I think that especially that first cop just not even going in, watching people go in. I think it just shows either incompetence or just kind of unpreparedness. Yeah. I think it's just these aren't the kind of people that should be your first line of defense. I don't know. I don't want to bash this police department too bad. There might be different situations we don't know about, but
Right.
I don't know, and maybe they need more training for this. They're just not prepared for these school shootings or something.
I think if they look, what I'll say is that it looks bad. I think if they came out and they presented with to me a tactical reason why they didn't enter, I would be able to buy into that a little bit more. But the fact is like you have four people. You can literally like you can enter a building with four deputies and cover all angles. Like I
Yeah.
saw Lawrence O'Donnell making an excuse that the AR fires faster than the standard issue pistol, and like they said something like I'm gonna give a general number. This isn't accurate, so don't fact check me, people in the chat. But basically, their pistols fire at like 1,300 feet per second, and the AR-15 fires at like 3,500 feet per second. So like they like Lawrence O'Donnell on MSNBC was using that as an excuse for why they didn't go in. And the ridiculous thing about that is that literally means that if they fired bullets at each other at the same exact time, the bullet from the pistol would have connected with the shooter 500ths of a second or 500ths of a tenth of a second after the AR-15. So like even though that sounds like a big difference in when you compare the feet, in terms of the time the shot will be fired, it's like a fraction of a second.
Yeah, yeah, I'm not buying that. I mean, I could see them, not being as prepared for like more like the AR is more of like a rifle machine gun kind of situation as opposed to like pistols. But I don't think that's the biggest factor here. I think like you're saying, there might be something tactical. Like I know these things turn into shit shows, so we don't know like exactly. I was actually going to ask just out of nowhere, like what happened to the shooter? Did he go down or?
Oh, so the shooter who we're not going to name because he doesn't deserve any fame. He was captured. What happened is he did a move from 24. Like when the terrorist is stuck in the mall, fires a gun in the ceiling and escapes to the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the shooter did in this instance. He took off his gear and threw it aside, and he left with the students, and they captured him an hour later. Like
Wow.
so, yeah,
Yeah,
he
that's why I just thought of it. I mean, I've heard about the story a bunch of times, but I didn't know that detail. I was just curious.
but he's alive, and for all the conspiracy theories out there, since he's alive and they have to put him on trial, stuff has to be entered into evidence. So you're going to see a lot more stuff since he's alive. So just calm it down with the conspiracy theories because I'm seeing a little bit of that in the chat, and I'm like, I'm not interested in your conspiracies. I'm going to be perfectly honest. But yeah, what actually bugged me, besides the fact that they're defending this deputy, the one that cowered, um, is the kids, the kids that are the gun control kids are defending the deputy. Like you have other kids that are not in favor of gun control, and they're like, "No, I lost a friend because this guy was a coward." Like, but the gun control kids that we see on TV are like, "Well, you can't expect him to confront somebody with an AR-15." It's like, no, actually, I can. That's his job. Like he signed up
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah, I
I
know,
didn't.
and like I wish they would have just had. I'm just thinking off the top of my head, like I wish they had like some kind of shield or like riot gear, like in their cop car or like on the campus.
He
I
had a
know
vest.
that's
He
yeah,
had the
vest is
bulletproof vest
good,
on.
helmet. I'm just thinking. I mean, I don't know if this is going to save or change anything, but I'm just if there's other precautions we could take, at least having some kind of like bulletproof shield, like he could have maybe got in there better and had a better chance against that big our AR-15.
Right. Yeah, and like you could try, is what I'm saying. Like you signed up to be a cop. It's a tough job. It's a dangerous job, but you signed up for it. Like go. Sometimes you got to take a risk, and it's kids, man. Like we're talking about kids. Like and what makes it even worse is like the JROTC kids. Like like I know one of them was wounded multiple times, blocking a door to save his classmates. One of them was killed holding the door to let people in. So like the junior like military, which is what JRTC is, like those kids acted incredibly bravely, and they sacrificed themselves for their classmates. Like
Hmm.
they're JRTC, they're the junior military. It's like a training program in the school. It's not even at the level of a cop, and they
Yeah.
acted heroically. So this guy just he like I don't want anything to happen to him. There are people who are like harassing him. Like leave him alone. He has to deal with that in his own life, and he's resigned. But like pure cowardice.
Maybe he was getting too old for this shit. Like
Maybe.
Murdoch. It's like a day before
Yeah.
he's retiring.
Yeah. So I know there's a little bit more on this. If you guys have questions, like, you guys can super chat or like throw them in the chat. If I see a good one, I'll try and answer it. But we're gonna wrap up in a little bit, even though this feels like it went by really fast. Um, because
Yeah.
nobody else got to edit. But yeah, so I don't know if I want to do final thoughts, but I feel like there's one thing if we don't talk about it, I'm gonna feel like we missed it. Oh, the town hall. What were your just general thoughts about the CNN town hall?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was really staged. I think it was, like and then I don't even think this is really conspiracy or any kind of like uh it's not a stretch. I mean, CNN has been caught faking their town halls before. This is like the stuff they did pre-election and everything. They got caught with the questions getting pushed. So I thought it was kind of respectable that one person, whichever person that said they wouldn't read the question, and they're just like, "Nah, I'm
Right.
not going for that." And yeah, I mean, it's just CNN's the worst. So I just think it's just all a charade.
Right. And to be clear, when we say that it's staged, we're talking about like the selection bias. Like they specifically screened out kids that were going to ask questions that weren't about gun control. Like because what they ended up doing is they asked one kid to script something, and he wanted to talk about arming teachers, and he wrote out a bunch of questions. So then they told him it was too speechy, and that he needed to cut it down. And then he got reduced to 3 questions, and then they were like, "Why don't you just ask this question?" And they kind of rewrote it for him, and that was a gun control question when his other questions were about security. And the thing is we saw other kids, and they were all giving speeches.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it just shows the the direction of CNN, and I think it's misleading. The whole town hall thing is set up to look like it's organic, and it's like, oh, we're going to hear what the people have to say. We're going to let people have their say. Like that's how a real town hall is, like if you're at a town hall in your city, it's like people show up and ask their questions genuinely and honestly and from themselves. And I think that's the one of the biggest issues with these CNN ones is they try to present them as a real town hall, and it's not at all.
Well, I honestly, like, I'm gonna give a little bit of, well, we know from the WikiLeaks email that a question from a citizen was leaked directly to Hillary Clinton by Donna Brazil. So we know that the citizens that typically ask questions in the town halls are given some kind, like, they have to give the question in advance because that's how you leak it. And I know specifically because I have family friends that know politicians. Politicians will ask people to show up to town halls and give them a specific question. I don't think that happened in this case because they had to be kids in the school,
Mm-hmm.
but I definitely think CNN was like framing the narrative in a certain way. And the other thing that I found kind of disgusting in the town hall is Dana Loesch from the NRA was being lectured by the sheriff that missed warning signs. And the sheriff released a statement saying, "We didn't miss 39 phone calls. We only missed 23 phone calls." Like that's not a big deal. I'm like, dude, that's still way too many. And then
Mm-hmm.
BuzzFeed reported that their own independent investigation, BuzzFeed, by the way, not a right wing news outlet, they reported that the actual number is not 23, it's not 39, it's 45 separate calls on this kid that they missed, plus the 2 FBI warnings. And they released a transcript for the FBI warning, and that was really detailed for a warning. Like, it doesn't get much clearer than that. So,
Mm-hmm.
like, for that sheriff to know that his deputies acted like cowards, to have missed all the warnings, to come out and not take some goddamn responsibility himself, that was shameful. And he attacked the NRA woman. That was just disgusting.
Yeah, and I thought I'm Dana Loesch. Loesch. I never could say that last name, but I think she's always spot on a lot of her points. Like especially this NRA stuff. It's a tough time to stand up for guns in the NRA, but she does pretty good. And I hate to see her getting like bashed so hard right now because even like the kids, the survivor kids are going after her, and it's like it's just like really tough because like we were saying, where it's hard to criticize the kids, like you want to leave them alone, so it's almost like they're taking advantage of that and going after her and the NRA, and like she's kind of like getting the most of it, and I just think it's like unfair, and it also just shows the unfairness, like that town hall and the CNN setup. It's like they're putting those NRA people and just like they have Republicans on their shows sometimes just cause to try and appear fair, but it's not fair for them at all.
Right. And to be fair, I think Dana Loesch has done a good job for the most part. She went on CNN and then she said CNN enjoys mass shootings, which is like it's a dirty tactic to say that people want mass shootings to happen. So she did it back to CNN, and I didn't think that was appropriate. Like we shouldn't divide. Like I think we can agree as Americans that we don't want to see children like killed, like harmed. You know what I mean? We should all be able to agree to that. So I think she did a good job, except for that. But the funniest part about that is after she said it, the host got all indignant, and she was like, and then Dana Loesch was like, "Well, you have people on this show or on the network calling me a child murderer," and she's like, "That's never happened." Literally, some of the kids were on the show with that exact same host, and they called her a child murderer on the show like a few days ago. So she was right and wrong in certain
Mm-hmm.
instances.
Yeah, and that's just another line, like I was saying, where they won't even, everyone's afraid to question the kids, and like it understandably, like we're kind of tiptoeing around it and everything, but even more so like when they say something outrageous, like the line you just mentioned saying Dana did this, it's like no one's even going to question that, even though it's just totally ludicrous.
Right. And by the way, like I have no problem questioning the kid's statements. It's just I don't want to get into a situation where we're attacking like the victims of it, because that is ultimately what the left wing media wants. Like
Hmm.
they want you to look like a bad person. And it's funny, we had a conversation when you were talking about making a video on this, and I was like, dude, you're gonna get a community guideline strike. And we actually know people in our YouTube circles that like have gotten community guideline strikes from this. I want to read a super chat right quick. Joseph Smith, and it says, "From the prophet, have some currency. Sorry, no planet," which is a weird message. But Joseph Smith, yesterday, I was asking him if he was literally the prophet of the Mormon faith.
Hmm.
So
I
that's
wouldn't
where that
doubt
was.
it. Joseph Smith, he those gold plates had a lot of magical powers in them. Maybe one of those gold plates taught him how to give away super chats.
Yeah. Did you see the that tweet? I think it was by some celebrity. I want to say it was Alyssa Milano, but I don't know. Where she was like, the Second Amendment was popular in 1971, and she's like, other things that were popular in 1971, and she's like slavery, dying when you're 40, and she just named a bunch of bad things. Um, you know what else was popular in when the Second Amendment was ratified? The other nine pieces of the Bill of Rights that was ratified at the same time. So freedom of speech, due process, a right to a lawyer. Like
I
it's
think
funny.
you mean 1871 then, right?
No. 1791. Sorry.
Oh, okay, yeah. I thought it was, yeah. I got you now. That's when the Bill of Rights happened, and yeah, no. I think it's just misleading and wrong, and we know the reason the Second Amendment, and you know trying to coming from this revolution, coming from the American Revolution, having the British not let us have guns and that kind of stuff, like the right to revolt and all that stuff. It's ingrained in our country's history.
Right. And yeah, and just because I mean we've come out like pretty pro gun on this. There are some gun things that I would like to see change. Like we should have better integration of information in our background check system. I'm not sure, but it wouldn't have worked with this guy because they never actually arrested him. But there have been shooters that have had issues and like domestic violence from the military, and it never got integrated into the system. So fixing that is, I think, is a no-brainer. Making states report their information to the federal government, or at least incentivizing them to report their information, so we have a better database, is a no-brainer. And I think there should be some kind of like gun restraining order where somebody gives you credible information, you can lose your guns on a temporary basis, and then later it has to be proven out in a hearing. So that way your rights are still respected, but we acknowledge the fact that guns are a little bit dangerous. They are deadly weapons, and like, you know, I would put the onus to prove it on the state. Like, you don't have to prove that you are fine to own a gun. Like, they have to prove it. But temporarily, there should be a system where they can grab them for a little bit and have it reviewed within, like, you know, a 72-hour period, whatever period you need for like a hearing to happen. I think that should be sunk up. So, do
Yeah.
you have any thoughts on stuff that you might support, or?
Yeah. I think what you said was fair. I think prevention is a good place to start. Listening to those warning signs that got skipped over for this one, investigating that, and I think too. I think some other things, just as far as I don't, just kind of like cultural things that might help. I don't want to sound like an SJW and say everything's about culture. I know these are specific people with you know, he had a family and whatnot, but I think there's a lot to say about this whole like anti-male toxic masculinity thing that's going around the country now, especially in schools. Like, that's where I'm seeing it the most. And I did a video on it, NBC, investigating this toxic masculinity stuff in schools. I think that's the kind of rhetoric that makes these young boys just kind of hate themselves, and like it turns into shitty toxic behavior. I mean, they say that the being male is wrong, and then I think it's just making things worse. Like, these kids obviously are troubled, and it's usually young boys that are doing these, almost exclusively doing these bad things. And
Right.
I'm saying, I think in a way, I don't know how to go about it. I don't have the specifics. Maybe I'm being a little wide-eyed, but like, maybe just trying to help boys more, and like, if you see trouble, like identifying like psychological tics that these kids could be helped with, because obviously they have issues, and you know, if we could help with that in any way, that would be great. And then I think another factor, another thing on the other side, it's hard to say with this one too, but the glorification, the rewards that these kind of like shootings, like these people getting fame from it, and it turning into these big spectacles, and we're all talking about it now, and it's all over the news. I don't know how. This is another thing. Like, I don't know how we could fix that, because I'm not saying we don't cover it. Like, we obviously need to cover things in the news, like the Vegas shooting, and now we're talking about Parkland. But I think if there's some way to kind of hide their names or whatever it is, it's like, because you know, a lot of these people are doing it for attention, and they want to get on the news, and they want to make a name for themselves, albeit you know, in this weird kind of messed up way. But if we could try to, I guess it's another kind of cultural decision. One of my suggestions being preventative, and then kind of other one being what happens after these things happen.
Right. And like, you're a bit of a sports fan. I'm a bit of a sports fan. There used to be a big problem with people running on the field during games. They stopped showing them on TV, and that cut down a lot. A lot of these shooters worship other shooters.
Mm-hmm.
And like, that the media should have like a little bit of an agreement that they're not going to name people. And there are some outlets that don't do it, and I give them all the respect in the world. Then there are other outlets, not to name any names, the Young Turks, who say that they don't do it, but anytime that they think that they can pin it on a white group or a white person, they'll show his face, and it's like so blatant and disgusting. And I can see why people would do that, because if it's somebody that helps your narrative, you're like, they're doing it. So it ends up being a thing where we all get like weaponized against each other. That's why I try not to cover shootings like on my channel for the most part. And if I do cover it, I try to wait until time passes. It's just that like, it's at a point where this is such a story, and it's perpetuating. And it's like, I feel weird covering, you know, Black Panther a lot and not covering it. And like, that's one of the reasons why you wanted to come on, because you do want to talk about it. but
Yeah,
we don't.
yeah, I felt the same way, and like I was called out a few times last week. Just a few comments saying, "Oh, you're too scared to talk about this. You're too scared to talk about the shooting." And yeah, I would say that's fair. I mean, a little bit. I mean, part of it is too. Like, it's kind of like a bummer, and like I don't always talk about things that are such a bummer. Like some people will,
Right.
I avoid like death and tragedy if I can. Sometimes it comes up. Sometimes you talk about war, but for the most part, I'm doing like entertainment, more lighthearted stuff, making fun of this person, racism and stuff like that. But the other thing is, yeah, there is a certain side to it. Being afraid, you don't want to lose your channel, get a strike, other kind of punishments from YouTube. Lots of stuff like
Right.
that. Like, yeah, I don't want to have that happen, especially not for like something like this. That I'm not gonna rewrite the rules on this, or I could definitely have put my 2 cents in, but it's not like I'm expected to report on this. I'm not a news channel. I'm just more of a commentary kind of thing. But yeah, I would definitely agree. The other thing, like you're saying about naming names and TYT having that bad reputation for that, and then also like the stuff we kind of started with this stream was the part where people will weaponize this and turn it into a gun control debate. Like that's another thing that these shooters and these crazy people that want attention, that they want attention any way possible. So when we all turn into this hysteria and use every opportunity to put kids on TV, talk about gun control, I think that's a part that somehow needs to get curbed, or kind of like have some kind of respectful agreement to kind of not hype these things up too much, because they are trying to get on TV and get attention.
Right. And like that they write manifestos. Nobody writes a manifesto if they don't want people to read it. So yeah, I think we pretty much touched on everything. There was a tweet that I'll just throw out there, and then we'll wrap it up. It's a little bit lighter because it's SJW stuff, trying to make it about them. Did you see the tweet where somebody who is, of course, a verified member on Twitter said that this child was adopted, and that adopted child went on to, do a horrible crime? They're like, tell me again why we shouldn't be in favor of abortion.
Wow. I have to think about that for a second. I know where they're going with it. It's just like, man, that's just a perfect example of people opportunistically taking this tragedy to push their agendas.
Yeah, making it about the thing that you care about. Because like when you tweet something like that out, that makes me think that you're basically like, I care about abortion and I care about Planned Parenthood. I don't really care about what happened in this situation, but it helps my narrative. So that's some high level crap. And I just wanted to finish it off with
Yeah,
something
yeah.
just cringy.
It's kind of like, it's like almost like these tragedies are in a way like a Rorschach test, where people just kind of look in and they see what they want to see. Like some people will see it and they're like, "Oh, this means we should ban guns." And then other people are like, "Oh, actually this means we should have more guns." And then this other person you're talking about is like, "This means abortion should be legal." And then
Yeah.
and then another person is just like saying, "Oh, we should um put put soy in all our lattes." I don't know. It's just like people just
We,
turn it into
we,
whatever they want.
we should become we should go paleo or something ridiculous like that,
Vegan. The
because
vegans are like, this is
yeah,
why we should all be vegan.
I didn't want to mention them because I'll get messages from vegans.
Oh,
But
here we go.
that's why I said paleo. Like his diet was wrong. And some people bring up the meds angle, and I think this kid was on meds, and I don't think that's okay. But I don't want to get into medicine because neither of us are experts on that. But
Mhm.
yeah, I had a lot of fun, even though this topic is pretty dark. Um, I'm gonna wrap it up in like 2 minutes, guys. So if you have any super chat questions or anything like that, throw them out there now. But I just want to say thank you for coming on, and I'll let you do a closing statement, and then I'll close it up.
Great, great. Yeah, thanks for having me on. Always good to talk with you. Sorry the topic is so dire and dramatic, but it's good to get a discussion. Good to get the ideas out there. I'm glad I could say a few things on it. Besides that, yeah, I just hope for the best. I hope things will die down and we can just get to the bottom of this and move forward. End of the day, we want less of these situations to happen, however, whatever it takes.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm pretty much gonna wrap it up. Banksy, I see you in the chat. I know I said I was gonna bring you on, but you gotta message me on Twitter, dude, and I would have thrown you the invite and you could have came on. But what you call it? I'm gonna do a stream like a monthly end of the month stream, so I will have you on soon. I might do one in like 2 weeks, depending on the reaction to this. So like I will have Banksy style on in the chat. He's a friend of the channel, and he's a cool dude. And Banksy's a cool artist, even though he's a left winger. But yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready to wrap this up. Basically, I think we're pretty respectful. If you guys don't see me streaming for a while, it's because I did get a community guideline strike, which would be ridiculous because I think we've been well on the respectful side on this issue. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us. I'm gonna cut the broadcast right now, and I'll talk to No BS in secret about you guys, and we're gonna say mean things about you. Bye.
Later.